live. And so the goal for today's meeting is to learn more about the company. So it's a company introduction webinar, and we will start with a short introduction by the company CEO, who will talk a little bit about the history of the company, the products that they offer, anything that students need to know about the company. And then we have a few questions already, and I'm sure there will be more as the presentation progresses. So we will then just revert to the question and answer mode in a few minutes. And so we would like to keep it informal, so no presentation slides, no formal protocol. We'll just talk about the company and try to find out as much as possible so that the students have the information to go with as they will be trying to develop a market expansion strategy for the company. So I suggest we start with a short introduction. So if we can please then go to Mr. Pino and ask him to talk about the company. So.
Okay, I provided a little background on your X-Culture questionnaire. We started in business in 1994. We're a small business, woman-owned, and we actually started in the equestrian field, where we were providing products for cleaning and taking care of leather items like saddles, bridles. Ultimately got involved in cleaning horse blankets and saddle pads and apparel like breeches and riding gear. We sold that portion of the business back in 2015 to a larger company when we came to realize that taking the next step in growth was just a little bit beyond our reach, both financially and otherwise. So we had teamed up with this company, got a decent price for what we developed, and which gave us the opportunity of then growing into Unicorn Clean, which was a secondary product that we made as an offshoot to the leather industry. We actually invented a product that cleaned leather in a washing machine. So when we looked at the various components of what that entailed, most of that had to do with cleaning natural fibers like wool. And so we wanted to look at that and see how we can possibly expand into that arena. And we found that a number of mills that process wool and alpaca, a lot of that industry, by the way, is in Australia and somewhat in New Zealand and the UK. The cleaning of the wool items is a predominant industry, and what we found in that was, to make a product that actually did not jeopardize the wool or the fiber. The old ways of cleaning that were really harsh in 180-degree plus temperature waters, and with cleaning components that were very, very harsh. They removed the lanolin and contaminants, but ultimately they wind up to be, a 20 to 30% loss factor in handling those natural fibers. So our research went into looking at components that were safer, cleaned in lower temperature waters, and most importantly, were biodegradable and earth-friendly. We looked at our competition. Our competition tended to be a lot of the large industrial companies, some like DuPont, and of course the household companies like Procter & Gamble and Colgate. And we tried to look at creating a niche into that marketplace, knowing that these products were available maybe at a somewhat lower cost. So how do we counter that was the initial key. So we were able to counter that by looking at a unique placement in the marketplace to concentrate on natural fibers like wool, alpaca, cashmere, and silk. Cotton happens to be a natural fiber. And so we put our heads together along with our chemists to try to tackle a safer way of cleaning and processing and minimizing the loss factor in what people do. So that kind of focused more on the commercial and mill side. And we realized that that was just the first step. Our philosophy is to follow the fiber. And so cleaning and getting rid of contaminants at the initial stage after shearing and processing was phase one. The next phase, of course, is those fibers are then woven into yarns and garments. And so we felt that we needed to come up with products to allow the consumer to continue to take care of those fibers they paid so much for, that they enjoyed the handle and feel and comfort. And again, not to damage the fiber and to keep those refreshed. So we have two aftermarket products that we developed for the consumer. That was kind of, part of the next phase. It turned out that along the process, a lot of the municipalities, particularly on the West Coast, Oregon and California, were starting to ban disposable diapers. And so we felt that maybe there's a market niche. If we were able to clean those heavy-duty contaminants from the initial fibers and do it safely and without any kind of dermal effects, we then decided to tackle the baby diaper industry, which was a fast-growing industry, and it became the upsurge of cloth diapering again. So we found a market niche. We have several distributors who are handling that aspect of it now, and we were able to clean not only the baby diapers, but the baby apparel with all of the food articles and things that may appear on their clothing and bedding. The realization, of course, is, again, we're a small company, and we look at the next phase of developing a all-natural product. We previously did not feel the economics for that. We focused on earth-friendly and biodegradable because the natural components that we initially tried did not do a good job, and they were really expensive for the consumer. That is starting to change and evolve, so the next step is getting into that. We realize that as a small company, we cannot do it alone without the help of our distributors. As I mentioned earlier, we have distribution in Australia and New Zealand, Canada, Germany, Norway, the UK, and of course the US. So that is giving us, help. We also work on online sites, including Amazon, and there's still plenty of room, we believe, to grow. We are hampered somewhat, obviously, by financial constraints as a small company. And part of it, of course, is to generate the volume and additional cash flow and new outlets for our products worldwide. So I guess this is a challenge for your students and compatriots there in different parts of the country to see if they see some opportunities that we obviously, as being too close, tend to miss.
Right. So a few more questions about the company itself, if we may. So you do both then research and development, and you basically develop the formula, and then you also do the production as well, or do you only do the research and somebody else produces the products?
It's a combination of all of the above. We initially, I had a chemistry background in my college days, but I'm not a chemist. My wife, Anna, who's a partner and president of the company, had a medical background. So we tended to focus in on some of the things that we knew. And then we had a chemist who helped us tweak the formulas to look at, okay, we were doing our mixing and blending in our kitchen and in our garage in the typical basement scenario of production, and expanded on out from there into a production facility. And the chemists helped us to make sure that we were properly balanced in our formulations. They did not deter, in temperature conditions or separate for the consumer. We now have an office here in Virginia where we do the administration and sampling. Our production is currently in the Tennessee area, and we split that up to enable us to focus more on development and marketing.
So how big is your company at this time? How many people work for you?
Well, we have 3 people here in Virginia. That's myself, my wife Anna, and Melanie Anderson, who handles all of the customer service representation. We have a lady who works out of Kentucky who does our on video blogging and social media. We have a graphic artist in Tennessee. We have an attorney in Phoenix. So we outsource some of the not everyday problems to other people, but 3 full-time people here.
And the production itself, so where exactly does it happen? Is it mainly in Virginia, or do you have production facilities in different locations?
Right now, it's all centered in Tennessee.
Tennessee.
And we used to do that all in New Jersey before we moved to Virginia. We then transferred all of that to Tennessee. The cost of production, hourly rates, and facilities in Tennessee tend to be less expensive than New Jersey and Virginia.
Now, a student is asking a very interesting question. So the solution, the shampoo, you make that. The bottles, do you buy them or do you order them from somebody else? How does it work with the containers that the shampoo goes into?
Okay, well, if we want to start from the beginning, we have to look at the raw material and components that go into the bottles. and those are produced by major large companies. Most of that comes out of Texas, where they have their refining facilities, and then they're in turn shipped to Tennessee. In Tennessee, they would blend the materials into various formulations that we devise for the products. The facility in Tennessee, in turn, orders caps, bottles, labels, cartons, for the various components. We've designed and approved all of those. We in turn have marketing materials, like brochures and video presentations that we pass on to our customers and distributors.
Can you talk some more about the geography of your business? So you mentioned that the production happens primarily in the United States, but your products are sold all around the world. You talked about Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and so on and so forth. So why those countries? How did you end up doing business there? Like Australia, New Zealand, it seems like as far as it gets. How did it come about?
I think part of that was need. A lot of big companies didn't pay attention to the small manufacturers and shops that focus on the natural fibers. And that's kind of where we found our niche. So in the years that we developed this product, I think the social media tended to help us out the most by getting the word out to locations. And we, in turn, tried to work shipping and economics the best way we could from having a low-cost production facility, but one that had access to shipping to the many places. So we developed contracts with UPS and FedEx and freight forwarding companies to lessen the impact of shipping costs to areas like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and of course the European locations.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the distribution model? So you mentioned distributors. So all of the distribution goes through distributors and then onto retailers, or do you sell something directly to the customers? So basically, who are the distributors and who are the end customers of products like this?
Well, in the beginning, it's kind of a chicken and egg. A lot of the distributors don't want to know you until you have a customer base. So, our first focus was to develop, contact with individual consumers, then small retail shops, and then ultimately the distributors. The distributors obviously are in it to either add our product line to what they're currently doing, or feel that there's enough volume and where they can make money in selling to that targeted audience that we were talking about. So we sell online. We sell to people who go on to Amazon, and that in turn develops the dealer and distributor base. Once we have people online as a dealer, we have a dealer locator on our website so that people are encouraged to shop locally and to buy from those people nearby. And that kind of gives you the kind of what we call residential propensity, is that if you see enough clustering of dealers and customers, a lot of the distributors then take notice and say, we can do something here to help you further market and distribute in this area where we cannot specifically target.
So then who are the end consumers? I understand you have two lines of products, essentially. You have baby clean, so I assume that's mainly diapers and baby clothing cleaning materials. And then you have unicorn fiber, which is primarily for the leather cleaning products, or how they different? And then who are the end consumers then of both lines of products?
Okay, we first started with the unicorn fiber, and unicorn fiber was an offshoot of our leather care product line, where we were cleaning wool fleece items and wool blankets. And ultimately, you're going to be talking to Mary Forte,
right.
Mary's Poop, later on. She happens to be my sister-in-law, and she has 150 alpaca.
Right.
And a lot of the alpaca breeders and growers used to throw away the fiber. They didn't know exactly what to do with it.
Right.
And so we said, well, there's a need. There's a way of cleaning that fiber, as I mentioned earlier, to minimize waste in the processing, because the alpaca fiber people had to go to sheep processing, which necessitated higher temperature and more powerful cleaning products. So that created a need for us to develop that line and work along with people like Mary, who have a farm, have what I call the raw material, which
right.
obviously the alpaca fiber. Historically, though, they didn't necessarily scour or process the fiber. They in turn sent it to mills who actually did their cleaning. The mills in turn send the fiber to spinners and weavers to make the yarns. Then those people in turn obviously sell to the yarn shops and hobby shops. So the fiber side was the initial aspect of selling both the commercial grade quantities of our unicorn fiber products for scouring, and then subsequently for taking care of the yarns and knit materials. The unicorn clean was the offshoot of that, by getting more involved in the different aspects of the consumer side for moms and baby apparel and bedding that I mentioned was helpful because of the ban on disposable diapers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Interesting. Now, we have a lot of questions about your marketing strategy. So how do you advertise your product now? What channels do you use to do the advertisement? What kind of promotional materials do you use? Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. We, in our early days, the media was basically print, magazines, and newspaper articles and so forth. That evolved in basically doing, about 90% of our advertising online through our website, through targeted groups. There are a number of guilds and communities that we focus on. We do about 10% now in print advertising. The last component is word of mouth, and believe it or not, these guilds and the small communities that have been targeted, the best response that we get is somebody telling somebody else about the efficacy of the product, and so that also helps. So it was print, now more social media. We in turn also create PowerPoint presentations and send that on out to different people. We have brochures that we also send out. We attend trade shows, both in the baby industry and in the fiber industry, to target more of the dealer and wholesale groups.
Right. Who would you consider to be your biggest competitors, and how would you evaluate your strengths and weaknesses compared to your competition?
Okay, we felt the big guys, as I mentioned, was the DuPont on the commercial side, and Procter & Gamble and Colgate on the retail side, who kind of tend to focus more on the textile and the general consumer for the everyday textiles and apparels. So our focus was to essentially get out of the textile aspect of it and focus on the natural fiber side of it. On that side of it, we found a few companies that were targeting the same audience. There were two Canadian-based companies. One is called Eucalyne, and the other one is called Soak, and they make products addressing some of the same issues that we tend to address. However, their focus tended to be a one-step leave-in product. In other words, to both clean and condition all at one time. And to us, that didn't seem to work and address the cleaning side is more efficacious. We looked at that, and we did some microscopic testing to find out what happened with that leave-in product. And it's like the scenario of washing your hair and leaving the shampoo in. So are you really getting clean? You're not, because you leave some of the particulate matter back on the fibers. And so our microscopic testing showed that a clean with our product and then a separate rinse, if you will, provided a better cleaning, no residual buildup, and it got rid of more of the odors and bacteria associated with day-to-day wear. So that was in our focus, to have a step product rather than a one-step product.
Interesting. So are there many players in the market who are also small companies like your company making this sort of products, or is it primarily just large companies like Procter & Gamble who dominate the market?
Well, the two that I mentioned tend to be small companies. Eucalyne is a family-owned company. They've been in business for about 50 years. There's another company called Kookaburra that tends to focus, a bit more on the scouring side of it. That is also a family-owned business here in the United States. The company Soak is a marketing arm of a Canadian manufacturer whose targeted audience here is primarily in the United States. So those would be the three major pieces of competition for us, about having the same size, if you will.
Right. Several students asked about the logistics. So it is a relatively heavy product. It is liquid, And then I assume shipping it also, because it's liquid, probably requires some special, I don't know, treatment, handling. So how does it currently work with shipping the products both to the distributors, large quantities, and you mentioned that you sell your products via Amazon, so I assume those are individual small orders. So how do you handle that? Is it an expensive proposition? What channels do you use to ship the products? Could you elaborate on that, please?
Well, we initially get a call from a consumer asking about the product, or most likely it's like the psychology. They have a problem. How can we help them fix it? And so that's been our focus too, is, to do a problem and solution approach. And that has been really, really helpful. So you start off small by being able to address and handle and maybe ship out an individual bottle by UPS or the Postal Service to, say, somebody in Texas. They try the product and hopefully migrate up to get a bigger size. When some of the dealers in turn see this activity either online or through questions or Facebook or Twitter or one of these social media sites, we then get a call from a dealer saying, I'd like to be one of your merchants. How do I go about doing that? So we provide them with a package of information detailing price and distribution and shipping and so forth. And that's where our facility in Tennessee gets involved. While we may handle the individual inquiries here in Virginia, which are relatively easy and we can turn around quickly, to those that we send to our distributor manufacturer in Tennessee, where they in turn would ship out a carton or several cartons or ultimately a pallet to the distributors in those countries I mentioned earlier. Those, are packaged in cartons for safety. We use recyclable, plastic materials to minimize damage. We have dividers in between the cartons, again, to minimize damage. The majority of those are shipped by UPS through the United States, Canada, Europe. The ones going to Australia generally get shipped to the West Coast, and they in turn are loaded on an ocean-going vessel. Again, to save some cost, it takes a little bit longer, but the cost is basically cut in half by shipping. And the ocean voyage is about 4 to 6 weeks. So there's a little planning necessary to accommodate the distribution in Australia and New Zealand.
Right. Yeah. We keep getting questions by email, but we also have quite a few students here with us in the live webinar room. So students, if you have any questions, you can either type them in the chat window, or you have the Q&A window there, or just raise your hand. You literally have a button that says raise hand and join us, and you can ask your questions live. Meanwhile, I would like to ask a couple more questions that came by email. Pricing. So how do you price your products? What's your pricing strategy? Do you offer any discounts to the repeat customers? Do you have any subscription models where people can pay a monthly fee and receive a shipment automatically every month? How does it work with pricing?
Well, it's a push-pull, ordering philosophy. I mean, people will buy when they need it. We don't have an automatic refill because different people use, the products in a different way. On the commercial side, there tends to be some seasonality as to when the animals are sheared to produce the natural fibers. And that varies a little bit by country. It's different in Australia, New Zealand versus, say, the United States or Europe. The pricing, we have a tiered pricing. We try specifically not to compete with any of our dealers or distributors, even with our online sales. That's what we call a MAP pricing program. That's a minimum advertised price. So everybody basically can't charge anything less than that so it protects each one with the pricing structure that we have. So, for example, obviously we try to price the product so we can make some money at the end of the trail. The distributors wind up, because of the volume that they buy, having the best price, because they in turn have to order bulk, but then in turn ship it to individual dealers and or consumers. The next tier is the dealers, and that's also volume based. So we have a two-tier pricing for the dealers, so that they can also make money with the MAP pricing structure that we have. All of the online sales, again, so as not to be competitive with anybody else, that's full retail price. So if somebody's buying on Amazon or on a website, they pay full retail plus shipping, so that we're not cutting into any of the dealer base pricing or structure that they have.
That makes perfect sense. I see we have
the obvious thing is, of course, that pricing structure and MAP pricing is for the United States because of the exchange, tariff, taxes and duties. That varies, say in New Zealand versus Germany versus the United States. So they would be adding on some of those shipping components, and it really is up to the distributor to establish a baseline price in the country that they distribute.
Right, that makes sense, yes. I see we have a question from Dalugama from Australia. Dalugama, I added you to the panelist list. Would you like to go ahead and ask a question?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
It's just that I have two questions that came to my mind. The first thing is, given that you are selling the product to different regions all over the world, do you see a difference in demand? I'm thinking maybe especially in Australia and New Zealand compared to other regions. Do you see that there is higher demand in these regions where there's more farm animals compared to the rest of the world?
We see, more opportunities in Australia, given the demographic structure that you outlined. The thing we saw in the past was a lot, and this happened in the leather industry, because of some of the environmental constraints. For example, a lot of the processing for leather went to China. It also happened that a lot of the scouring, that is the initial commercial cleaning of wool, also went to China. So the big companies were shipping everything to China after they shorn the animals. That became also the niche market for us, because what was left is a lot of the smaller mills and farms wanting to use products like ours and making them more accessible to that group.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And also regarding the second product, the baby product, you mentioned that there was a ban on disposable diapers. Is that right?
Yes, several municipalities in the United States, primarily starting on the West Coast, California and Oregon, and ultimately other locations, because of the preponderance of the use of disposable diapers and the fact that they didn't biodegrade as rapidly as everybody was saying. It opened up a new market for people going back and manufacturing cloth diapers for reuse. So that became an opportunity for us to kind of say, let's look at that, make sure our products are safe and efficacious to get rid of the associated materials that are left on diapers, as well as baby bibs, woolies and apparel.
Huh, interesting.
Right, because it is interesting, because very recently in Western Australia they completely banned using polythene and plastic bags, you have to literally take your own bags to any leading supermarkets now. So moving forward, there is a very high chance that things like baby diapers can also be banned, or you can get government subsidy or something if you're moving from that to
So is that only in Western
bags.
Australia or whole of the country is banning the plastic bags?
I'm pretty sure it's the entire nation that because
Interesting.
there was so much landfill and
Right.
there's so much plastic bags using.
Well, that's
Now you can either take your own bag or you have to pay for a bag. So
yeah.
people are starting to use a lot of bags now.
Well, that's a perfect opportunity for people, getting the word out in that regard, and
Yeah.
possibly how we may be able to help, tackle that by the use of cloth diapering.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm pretty sure if we check with larger supermarkets, they are getting government subsidy for encouraging such an act. So yeah, this could be something else too, something very similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is your opportunity.
Yep. It is an opportunity.
Sure.
There is another question about certification. Do products like this have to be certified in most markets, or can you just sell them without any prior certification or review?
Well, we started, kind of feeling our way, and then we ultimately submitted our products for two different kinds of tests. One was a scientific test to see if a scouring facility used our product, would it have any detrimental effects to the effluent, the material that came out of their machines. And the criterion there was that they should be able to use that brown water on their lawns, and did it in fact affect their lawn, the grass, trees, and things like that around there. So we send it to a lab, and amongst a dozen of the products that this person tried, ours was the only one that passed. So that was a great step for us. Secondly, because of the going into more of the human side with the baby product, we submitted tests to two different testing magazines. One was Family Circle, the other one's a parent and child magazine. And we wanted to make sure, there was no skin sensitivity issues or anybody trying it. So this went to moms who actually, had children, and obviously diapers and baby apparel for them to try. And as a result of that, we won 3 different kinds of awards. One was, Product of the Year. The other one was Top Choice. And then the second was a similar Top Choice in taking care of not only baby apparel, but adult apparel. So you don't have to use a different product if you're doing general laundry. We have some of that I can send and make available to you, Vas.
Yes, that would be nice. I will share that with the students. We have also a very interesting question from Xiao Chen. So you are here with us. If you would like to ask a question live, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to know if Unicorn Baby, they would like to open or develop a new market strategy to Asian countries, maybe like China or Korean, Japanese, because we know they have high population, and it means it can be produce a large opportunity to sell more products for.
Yes, that's a good point. A good question.
Yeah, I think we had gotten some inquiries initially from South Korea, and that was of interest to us. What made sense for that was some of the economies. South Korea and Japan, for example, tend to be a little bit more affluent. What we're concerned about is in some populations, the amount or the cost of the product, including shipping, may not be attractive to the general populace. So there we could definitely not compete with some of the larger companies on price. But South Korea and Japan and some other more progressive countries would definitely be a target audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. We are almost out of time, but I have received a few questions related to the general business and kind of startup. So you created this company about 25 years ago and essentially built it from ground up. Would you, or what would be your advice to students who are looking into the possibility of creating their own companies, maybe in a few years? If you had to go back in time, as one student put it, if you had to go back in time, what would you do differently to see even greater success of your company?
Anna and I often speak about that, and you know, the one thing we look at, you can have the best product in the world, and if it's not marketed properly, you're not going to get any of the sales. So I think you have to look at getting started a little slower with a concentration, not only on a product. A single product alone does not make it. I think you need to look at a combination of things, and also focus on the marketing effort. The marketing effort is key to, you know, getting the products out to consumers, and that's where your sales go. The dynamics of getting started have changed, as I mentioned, from say print media and earlier ways of marketing to now with the social media form of advertising. So the good part to that is people in the beginning don't know what size you are. So social media kinds of tend the level playing field to getting started. Again, you can't do it alone. So the third step is to develop a team, both in-house and outside, that have the talent to help you. You can get some part-time people to fill those technical gaps that I mentioned we had earlier. So it's a step process. Don't try to run before you can walk.
That makes sense. I was going to stop here, but there are a few more questions that just came by email, and if I may, I would like to ask them. So one, Maria Camila is asking, which would you consider your greatest strength and weakness compared to the competition?
Our greatest strength is the efficacy of the products. That is, we make products that we know work and tackle the problems in a environmental way. Our weakness, I think, is being a small company and the price point. If we were able to generate more volume and lower the price, I think that would definitely attract, you know, a larger audience. So if we can get to the next level, I think that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah. And one more last question. Have larger companies tried to acquire you?
Well, that happened in the leather side, where we have not attracted an audience, although we had people who look at online sales, and they were attracted by the volume of increase that we were getting, and we had some people saying they would like to represent us in a sale. Of course, when they heard how small we were getting started, you know, they want to look at multi-million-dollar sales. So we had the appearance of a multi-million-dollar company, but didn't have the sales to go along with that. So we're getting there, and we hope to continue to grow, and ultimately it could be a family business again for our next generation, or an attractive buyer.
Yeah, well, I guess that's definitely what you actually want. You want a small company that operates like a big one, than the other way around, a big clunky company that cannot do much. Yes. All right, so we're pretty much out of time. We would like to have a 15-minute break before we start the next webinar. Thank you so much for the answers, for the information. For the students, if you have any more questions, you can always send your questions to us. And so the way we handle questions is we have a database of frequently asked questions. And so because many questions are repetitive, so instead of bothering the CEOs with the questions again and again, if it's a repetitive question, we just copy and paste the answer from our database. And so this way you get the answer right away. And if it's a new question, one that hasn't been asked before, then we will contact the company and try to get some new information. So if there is anything else you would like to ask in the future, just send us an email. We will forward it to the company or answer it from our database. And we may look into the possibility of the second webinar later in the semester when you have something and have more questions. So we'll see if it will be possible to have one of those. And obviously this meeting has been recorded, so for the students who were not able to attend live, maybe had a class at this time or another engagement or it's a late hour in their time zone, they will be able to watch it later.
Thank you all for tuning in all over the world. I appreciate that. And Vas, be safe from the weather.
Yes, we're expecting a big hurricane hit in North Carolina in a day or two. So I'm far away from the coast. Hopefully it will not affect me, but we'll see. Thank you so much. And so, yes, we will be in touch by email.